was a little boy, 6 years old, and I looked up from the platform, this enormous ship way up above me. And then suddenly it started to slide away into the sea. And I felt that I was sliding backwards instead of the ship. I never forgot it. An extraordinary impression on me.
Everything about the Titanic was wondrous, starting with her size. She was almost 900 feet long, about 4 city blocks, 220 feet high. Just one of her anchors weighed 15 tons. A fortune was spent on her posh and elegant interior, though some think that money might have been better spent elsewhere.
Legend is that they spared no expense. They did. The fact that she had the triple screw made her clumsy and less maneuverable.
Smaller, faster liners of the day used 4 propellers, or screws. But Titanic, in what was thought to be a technological advance, was built with a new 3-propeller configuration. Unfortunately, this new technology had a hidden flaw, which would prove to play a major role in the Titanic's disaster. It made the massive ship hard to stop and slow to turn. But to adoring passengers like the young Eva Hart, the ship was magnificent.
I can see the Titanic if I close my eyes very clearly.
For the late Eva Hart, like hundreds of others, fate, in the form of a labor dispute, was to change forever the course of her life.
We were booked in a ship called the Philadelphia. And there was a coal strike and she didn't sail. And we were transferred to the Titanic, which everyone thought was a wonderful piece of luck.
It wasn't luck. It was a brilliant coup by Bruce Ismay. As the coal strike began shutting down competing liners, Ismay called his fleet into port and bet everything on one ship, his new Titanic.
There was a real shortage of coal, and a number of steamships were docked, and their passengers were transferred to the Titanic and also their coal.
Now, to reach America, there was only one ticket. One ship with enough coal to make it. And bookings were brisk.
There were a lot of famous people on board. There were some very, very wealthy people.
The first-class passenger list was a roll call of the rich and famous. The Titanic's lavish upper decks were the place to be seen. A playground for the powerful, who weren't above some scandalous behavior. Millionaire mining czar Benjamin Guggenheim flaunted his mistress on the way home to his wife. The wealthiest passenger, John Jacob Astor, was traveling with his pregnant 19-year-old bride. Astor also brought along a friend, Margaret Molly Brown, a brash Denver gold millionairess who was fighting her way up the social ladder.
She hadn't sought out going aboard the Titanic. It was just the ship that was available, and her friends, the Astors, said, "Oh, come along, it's going to be lots of fun." I guess anybody who is anybody was going to go on that ship.
But far below the elite first-class deck, way down by the cargo holds, the melting pot was steaming. More than half of the Titanic's passengers were housed in third class, in the crowded quarters known as steerage. Third class was the dirty little secret of the passenger trade. Mostly immigrants, they were barred from the first and second class decks, out of sight, out of mind. But more than half the profits came from steerage.
Steerage was pretty much the bread and butter for the White Star Line, the third-class passengers, because you've got, the most number of people taking up the least amount of space.
It's very important to everybody to realize that the Titanic was truly a floating Ellis Island.
A ticket to a new life? Only $35. About $650 today. A startling contrast to first-class fares of $3,300, or $60,000 in modern currency. American millionaire George Vanderbilt and his wife could easily afford the tickets, but they canceled by telephone the day before departure, after his mother had bad feelings about the trip. What people claimed were omens or premonitions of doom had dogged the Titanic from the start. In In the Irish shipyard during construction, the Catholic workers whispered in dismay about the identity number on Titanic's massive hull, 406063. Its upside-down reflection on the water looked like the words, "No Pope." Was the ship unholy? At least one passenger boarding on departure day sensed an ill destiny.
I knew that there was this something in the air about it because my mother was so terribly upset.
Though very young then, Eva Hart would always remember her mother's sense of dread and how her father tried to reassure her.
He put his arm around her shoulders. I can see this quite clearly. And he said, "No, my dear, this is the ship that is unsinkable." And she said, "Well, that is flying in the face of God, and that's why I'm frightened."
The most astonishing premonition of all is a novel, which seems to forewarn of the disaster 10 years before the Titanic was even built. It's called Futility, written in 1898 by Morgan Robertson. In it, a colossal new ship named the Titan is on its maiden voyage from England to New York in April when it strikes an iceberg and sinks in almost the exact spot where the Titanic would go down 14 years later. The Titan's dimensions, top speed, number of lifeboats and passengers aboard are strikingly identical to the Titanic's. Futility even predicts correctly which side of the ship the iceberg will strike.